welcome back. It's the Reverend Angela Faye McCarty, Chicago-based poet known as Sister Poochie, coming back to you again to continue Bible study. We are studying from The Journey Home, a collection of poems by Sister Poochie. This is a book of poetry that outlines 12 steps of how to gain peace and acceptance of Jesus Christ, and to unleash God's plan for you. It's also a Bible study guide with our Bible references that we're reviewing right now. So we're on the second stop of the journey, which is titled When Jesus Wants to Talk to You. I wanted to start this broadcast with a question. Have you ever seen God work in somebody else's life, or even maybe seen God work in your own life, or somehow witness the glory of God or the saving power, healing power of Jesus Christ, but didn't completely get it down in your spirit? Sometimes it's easy for us to recite the words of God, so they're in our mind, but we need to get it in our minds, in our hearts, and so that way our body and our actions will line up to what God's will is. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because we're talking about King Nebuchadnezzar. Now, he has seen God work for Daniel in helping Daniel to reveal a dream that the king did not even tell him what the dream was. And we have seen him work with the Hebrew boys when they were thrown in the fiery furnace for not bowing down to the graven image, which was the statue of the king Nebuchadnezzar that he had built. And we also saw the king look into the fire and see that there was a spirit that was protecting the Hebrew boys when they were in the furnace. Now, these things affected the king so much that he did make a decree that no one was to speak badly about the God that that Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego served. So much, I mentioned there was a letter. Now, this letter that I'm speaking of was a letter that God authored through Nebuchadnezzar, and this letter was actually the decree that he gave to the people. And I'm going to read it again. Okay, and we're coming from Daniel, the 4th chapter. Okay. To the people, nations, and men of every language who live in all the world, may you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. How great are the signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is eternal kingdom. His dominion endures from generations to generations. Now, those are the words that God put into Nebuchadnezzar that was the actual decree that he gave out to the people. And in that, he talks about the God of Most High and said that he's seen signs and wonders. You would almost think he was a believer at that point. But the king didn't yet get it in his spirit, and God then came to him again in a dream, and he dreamt about a tree that was great and vast and stretched up to the heavens, and that all of the animals and the birds found fruit and refuge in. Daniel came in and interpreted the dream and let the king know that the tree was you, because God said in the dream to Nebuchadnezzar, you need to cut down the tree. Leave the stump with its iron and brass rooted down in the ground, but cut down the tree. And I'm going to scatter all the birds and animals, and I'm going to drive you into the wilderness until you can acknowledge that I am the king of all high and rule over all kingdoms. I can set them up and I can chop them down. Well, you would think by this time, all the things that have happened, and even with the decree that I just read to you today and yesterday, that the king actually gave to the people, that the king would be a stone cold believer that God is God. But it didn't happen. He didn't have it in his spirit yet. It wasn't in his heart yet. And so what happened? the king was walking around, and I'm going to have to put my glasses back on. The king, and this is a year after the dream was interpreted for him by Daniel. The king was walking around on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. He said, "Is this not the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" The words were still on his lips when a voice came from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people and live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like cattle. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he wishes." Immediately, what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from the people, ate grass like cattle. His body was drenched with the dew of heavens, until his hair grew like feathers of eagles and his nails like claws of a bird. Now at the end of time, King Nebuchadnezzar raised his eyes toward the heavens, and his sanity was restored. Then I, who was King Nebuchadnezzar, praised the mighty high. I honored and glorified him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the people of the earth are regarding as nothing. He does as he pleases with his powers of heaven, and the people of the earth, no one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At that time that my sanity was restored, my honor and splendor was returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought after me and brought him back. But let's look again at the transition of what just happened. See, God came to the king in a dream, and he told him and gave him a vision of, if you do not change your ways and be able to acknowledge me as God Almighty, not just in a decree, but in your actions, in the way you talk, in the way you walk, in the way you speak, in the way you respond to people. Because again, he was a king that was oppressing people, requiring them to bow down to graven images and images of silver and gold. And God took him and showed him, and took him and showed him, and took him and showed him. And even though King Nebuchadnezzar was able to put a decree out for his people, acknowledging that God was the Most High and the Most Sovereign, he still had to have that dream come to pass. And he had to be driven away from his kingdom and stripped of everything before he actually got it. And when he raised his eyes up and finally acknowledged that God was God, his sanity was restored, his kingdom was restored. But this time, Nebuchadnezzar had it in his system, in his heart, in his mind. He got it. So, look and think about your life. Think about things that are happening around you. Look at the people who are around you in their lives. Look at the little things in your life. How many times does Jesus actually show you the way, or show you his might, or show you how glorious his Father is? And yet we say the words, but our actions never line up. Well, don't be like the king. Don't let Jesus run you into the desert. Don't let your tree be cut down before you get it. Well, we're going to stop there, and because the story doesn't stop there. That's just King Nebuchadnezzar's. Now we're going to be moving on to his son, and all of a sudden his son is going to see the writing on the wall. And we all know how we feel when we actually see the writing on the wall. So this is Sister Poochie saying peace, blessings to you, and I'll be back tomorrow so we can finish Bible study. Have a good one.